Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:07 on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. It's Larry O'Connor with Bethany Mandel this morning, getting it done. Good morning, Bethany. Hey, don't you have a Substack and podcast thing going on in your life?
I do. Thanks for asking. The momwars.substack.com. And I have not received a subscription notification this morning, so listeners have to jump on that.
Let's make that phone ding, people.
And
the
also,
Mom Wars. Well, in this next story coming out of Fairfax County Public Schools, it fits right into the Mom Wars issue. Also coming up at 6:35, Will Hild of Consumers Research on debanking. 7:05, the candidate for the Republicans for Lieutenant Governor, John Reed. And I'm going to get his reaction to this story we're about to tell you about. 7:35, Congressman Andy Harris. 8:05, KT McFarland. 8:35, Alex Pleitsis talk about the shooting at Fort Stewart. All right, let's get into it. This story just started to break during the show yesterday. I may have made a quick mention of it and said that this is something that needs investigating. And for the last 24 hours, there's been quite a bit of investigation. You know what? Let me show you or share with you how WJLA and Nick Minnock framed the story here, and then we'll take it from there. Take a listen.
Is looking into a report that is blowing up online involving Fairfax County Public Schools.
Nick Minnock has been looking into claims that school staff arranged abortions for high school students and didn't tell their parents.
Yeah, the story has been spreading like wildfire on social media. A report that says school officials at Fairfax County Centerville High School arranged and bankrolled abortions for girls back in 2021 without so much as a phone call to their parents. The report says 2 pregnant high school girls were involved, at least one of them under 18 years old. I reached out to Fairfax County Public Schools about these claims, and FCPS told me they immediately launched what they're calling a comprehensive investigation into the bombshell claims, and that they take all concerns of student well-being very seriously. I asked whether district personnel ever arranged abortions for students, and if they did so in this case. FCPS said not to their knowledge. I also asked FCPS if it's their policy not to inform parents if a student comes to a teacher or other school employee asking about an abortion. They pointed me to a document that outlines the district's standard operating procedure for that kind of situation. It says, quote, every effort shall be made to encourage and support students suspecting pregnancy to discuss their concern with their parents or guardians. But to be clear, nowhere in that document does it require school staff or even suggest that they contact parents. We will stay on top of this investigation. Check here for updates and online at WJLA.com.
There you go. That's Nick Minnock. And boy, a whole lot popped out at me during that report. All right. And one thing that Nick left out is the original source of this story. And listen, I get it. When a story is released online, and there's no other, sort of legacy brand major journalistic endeavor that has the same story, it is appropriate to be suspicious. But I want to tell you that's not a reason to discount the story. Understand where I come from. I started in this business 15 years ago with Andrew Breitbart. We had a lot of stories that people ignored because, well, it's only coming from Breitbart. Well, times have changed. I think that when we report things over, I'm not with Breitbart anymore, but when Breitbart reports things now, I think that it has, it carries a little more weight with it. But back at the time, even James O'Keefe's Acorn videos, people thought were fraudulent and faked and made up. So I want to give credit to this independent journalist. His name is Walter Kurt. He operates on Substack. And the story seems to have a lot of backup, including a handwritten note from one of these girls and she tells her story. And she names names. Social worker Carolina Diaz helped me with the termination of my pregnancy that is an abortion. Mrs. Carolina Diaz scheduled the appointment for me at the abortion clinic in Fairfax, paid the costs of that medical procedure, and kept everything quiet without informing my family. And I think that there's two key points of Nick Minnock's report there that stuck out to me. Number one, when asked whether anything like this has ever happened at Fairfax County, the spokesperson said, not to our knowledge. Fairfax County Public Schools, Bethany, did not say, absolutely not. That sort of thing would never happen here. I can't believe anyone's even suggesting the case. No, they didn't say that. They said not to our knowledge. And number two, most importantly, the current policy does not require teachers or school staff to immediately notify a parent that a very serious medical procedure could very well be imminent, not to mention the termination of a life in that pregnancy. Fairfax County Public Schools empowers bureaucrats, government employees to keep secrets of such a sensitive sexual and medical nature from the parents involved. That right there tells you something's broken. And we've got more on this story, but Bethany, author and owner of The Mom Wars, I would love for you to check in on this.
So even if you're not pro-life or pro-choice, let's set that aside for a moment. This is a 17-year-old child, a minor, who might have been abused. Mm-hmm. The fact that she found herself pregnant, her parents need to know, because if she had been raped, if she had been molested, this is information her parents need to know.
That's right.
Abortion is a very serious medical procedure. I know that we've been told it's just a bunch of cells, but actually it is a very serious medical procedure that can carry with it complications that are life-threatening. And again, for her parents not to know, and if, God forbid, something happened where she got an infection, there's any number of things that could have happened, for them not to have her full medical history. What if she didn't wake up the next morning and she has 104 fever from an infection and they don't know what caused it? That right. Delay in care could have been life risky.
That's right.
Can't think of the word.
Threatening. And Fairfax County Public Schools, as a matter of policy, is just fine with their employees keeping these things secret, which, by the way, I mean, again, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, if you're pro-protecting taxpayer dollars and potential liability, Fairfax County taxpayers are now opening themselves up to a huge
massive
liability
if
they are purposely keeping this information from a parent with regard to a minor. By the way, horrifyingly, the other girl involved in this story was 5 months pregnant.
Oh, God. That is...
And the counselor allegedly took that student to the clinic, so-called, to terminate the pregnancy. All right, there's more on this story, including some news involving Abigail Spanberger, as well as John Reed, our guest coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, who's running for lieutenant governor. He has chimed in on this. A little bit more on this incredible story coming out of Fairfax County Public Schools, the allegations now officially being investigated by Fairfax County Public Schools that an employee secretly counseled and even financed 2 girls' abortions at the high school involved here, Centerville High School. Yeah. This has apparently happened. All right, we'll get into more of these details in a quick moment. First, though, it's 6:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
All right, so a couple of new developments here on this story, or additional developments, I should say, because it is a developing story. To catch you up to speed, there is an independent journalist report that includes names of personnel and principals at Centerville High School that apparently participated in and even financed the abortion of 2 teenage girls. These teenage girls give a handwritten testimony to this in Spanish, by the way. These are English as second language students. The report originally comes from an independent journalist named Walter Kurt, who has a Substack. He's been doing a lot of media about this story as well, independent media, of course. And Nick Minach of Channel 7 has followed up with Fairfax County Public Schools. There is no blanket denial. All Fairfax County Public Schools said is they're going to investigate it. And when asked if this sort of thing could happen, they said, well, not to our knowledge, which is PR talk for, cover your butt, right?
I mean, I understand that statement. Not to our knowledge. It is just general CYA. Mm-hmm. I understand that. But the fact that it is policy... That's where I'm like, ooh, even if this is wrong, even if this guy is totally making things up whole cloth, everything. he has exposed the fact that this is actually a policy that needs to be changed for the sake of student safety.
Fairfax County Public Schools policy right now is that if one of the government bureaucrats, the government employees, whether a teacher, a counselor, administrator, a secretary, a principal, whatever, but they are a government employee, if they find out that a minor is pregnant and is seeking counseling for an abortion, the policy says, quote, every effort shall be made to encourage and support students suspecting pregnancy to discuss their concerns with their parents or guardians. But that's it. There's no mandatory notification. Now, if that same child had a broken arm,
100%.
If that same
or
child
needs Tylenol, for God's sake.
Exactly. Your kid has a headache and wants an aspirin. They can't do that.
No, but they can bring them for an abortion.
That's right. Well, and again, the policy is not facilitate the process, but it appears as though someone at Centerville High School, according to this report, and this girl names her, a social worker named Carolina Diaz, facilitated, encouraged, and even helped secure the money to pay for these procedures. Again, keeping the parents in the dark.
When I went to high school, I just learned like math and Shakespeare and stuff. I don't. Maybe that makes me old.
Yeah.
This is the terrifying thing about how the woke have taken over the schools, is that they see themselves as supplanting the authority of parents. And right.
They know better.
Yeah.
They know better with regard to gender transition. They know better with regard to all of these things.
And one of the conversations that will stick with me for the rest of my life, I was talking to a parent who's, when I was writing Stolen Youth, my book with Carol Markowitz, they had a child transition because the school had pushed it, the school had hit it, everything. And she was crying on the phone with me, and she said, who's picking up the pieces now? It's not that teacher, it's me. They right. Bounce. They out.
Walk away.
And I'm the one that has to pick up the pieces. I'm the one that has to figure out how to find a therapist, all of these things. And that teacher is gone.
And let's also be clear here, because you sort of walked through a couple of scenarios as to what you can hear the rationalization right now from Fairfax County Public Schools. Well, it's possible maybe this girl got impregnated by an abusive parent in the home or a family member.
All the more reason to not keep it secret.
That's right. That's right. Here's what you do. You either report it to the parents, or if that creates a dangerous situation, that's a reason to report to the police.
Yep.
But all they care about is killing that baby.
Yep.
That's the focus. That's the main concern.
We talked for a second about James O'Keefe, and this was one of the most disturbing things that he exposed in his exposés of Planned Parenthood, was that these girls would go in there and talk to Planned Parenthood about being trafficked. And the Planned Parenthood women were like, yep. And they became accomplices in the trafficking by covering up the evidence.
I hate to do this to you, but I lived in that world for so long. That was Lila Rose's undercover investigation.
But
it's understandable.
So glad you corrected me. I love Lila.
Lila Rose and James O'Keefe were friends, and she was inspired by James's work. But that was also a Breitbart rollout, by the way. And I was the one that raised that point. Planned Parenthood said, well, wait, no, we can't report these things. Like, oh, so they're covering up sexual assault.
Yep.
This is more than just facilitating the abortion of a minor. They're actually helping the abuser. Mm-hmm. They're helping the person who is engaged in the sexual assault. All right. John Reed, who's going to be our guest at 7:05, he's running for lieutenant governor. He has put out a statement about this. He says, if the reports are true, every single person involved should be investigated, fired, and potentially prosecuted. These are minor children. Parents weren't notified. Public school employees allegedly helped arrange abortions using tax-funded resources without parental consent or knowledge. That's not health care. That's government-sponsored abuse. And he asked Abigail Spanberger to comment on this. Now, we don't have a direct comment from Abigail Spanberger, but we do have this. She's spoken to CBS News, and CBS News asked her specifically about parental notification. And, well, this is all we've got from the woman who wants to be governor of Virginia. You read between the lines and you tell me what her position is. Cut 6, please, Michael.
You believe minors in Virginia should get parental consent before having an abortion?
I think it is important that we have a constitutional guarantee of access to abortion. And notably, the constitutional amendment that is going through the process here in Virginia is similar, almost identical to what has passed in states like Michigan and Ohio and other states, very mixed political states, where the issue of and the question of abortion is a politically charged one.
She never answered the question. It was a very simple question. Should parents be notified? Does there need to be parental consent for a minor to have this procedure? She refuses to answer it. She just uses the same old, access to health care buzzwords that are euphemisms for kill as many babies as possible. Don't ask any questions.
And also, those are two separate questions. Notification and permission are two separate questions.
That's right.
And that, to me, is so disturbing that she punted on both, because even if you believe that this child should be able to obtain this medical intervention without, their parent having a say one way or the other, they still need to know about it. This is still their child on their medical plan.
That's right. But the problem is the mindset of the left and Democrats in Virginia reject the premise that these are their children, that these kids belong to, well, I shouldn't say belong to, but are the custodial responsibility morally, ethically, and legally of the parents. No, they think they know better than the parents. Yep. Listen, Abigail Spanberger may have punted on that issue when the question was framed in an amorphous way. Now we apparently have a very real-world situation that unfolds before our eyes in Fairfax County. I don't think she can dodge this issue any longer, especially if pressure continues from the Winsome Sears campaign, and our guest at 7:05, John Reed, running for lieutenant governor. We'll raise it again with him then. Right now it's 6:24. Coming up, Will Hild is going to join us from Consumers Research. I'm sure you saw that President Trump identified J.P. Morgan and B of A as debanking him. Trump claims it was because the Trump administration demanded it. The Biden administration demanded it. And now we seem to have corroboration from the CEO of Bank of America. We'll get Will Hild to chime in next.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37. At 7:05, we'll talk to John Reed, running for lieutenant governor of Virginia. 7:35 brings us Andy Harris. At 8:05, KT McFarland. And at 8:35, Alex Pleitsis, former Pentagon official, talk about the shooting at Fort Stewart. It's Larry O'Connor with Bethany Mandel. Good morning, Bethany.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Your podcast and Substack, again, is The Mom Wars, isn't it?
It is. TheMomWars.substack.com.
Why'd you pick Mom War instead of Mommy War?
That was my co-host, Cara Kennedy. It was her choice.
All right. Fine.
I don't know.
Hey, we mentioned this yesterday on Tuesday, CNBC, Tuesday morning. Donald Trump, in an interview, mentioned that after his presidency, he was told by his longtime banker, J.P. Morgan, that he was no longer welcome there. That he had 30 days to remove, and he claims that he had over $1 billion cash.
Oh my God!
In various accounts with J.P. Morgan, and he'd been with them for decades. He then tried to take his business across the street to Bank of America, and he named Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan specifically, inciting the fact that they rejected his business too, and he says it was because of pressure from the Biden administration. Well, yesterday, it just so happens, the next day, the aforementioned Brian Moynihan, CEO of Bank of America, was on the same program, CNBC, and the host asked him about it, and Mr. Moynihan actually confirmed these details. Take a listen.
The president's after the right thing, which is the laws, rules, and regulations around our industry became used to cause things to happen. It's whether it's BSAML, whether it's KYC, whether it's reputational risk, and you heard Tim Scott quote about it. It is right to go look at these rules, because at the end of the day, they are causing decisions to be made that can be looked at in retrospect and made differently. We should get these rules right.
Okay, there you go. So these rules caused things to happen. In retrospect, they can cause things that, it's very, he's trying to be as political as possible by avoiding
that
the
passive voice, man. It reminds me of my kids when something breaks, something falls, and they're like, it just happened.
It happened.
It just happened.
The rules caused these things to happen. Understand, the rules were in place well before Joe Biden became president. What happened was the administration put pressure on the banks to employ the rules. And by the way, he referred to the BSA and KYC. That's Bank Secrecy Act, Know Your Customer Act. These are laws that are put in place, rules put in place for banks to operate that are anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism financing.
I don't know how much of. I mean, okay, I'm not a truther about the fact that it's Biden, but like, did they not want to do this? I don't think they had to have their arms twisted.
I will tell you right now, post January 6th, they leaned on a lot because Trump's the high profile guy, but it happened to everyday Americans. If you were associated with MAGA, January 6th. This happened to a lot of people, I think. Let's ask the expert. Will Hild is the executive director of Consumers Research, and Will. You've been talking about the debanking move in a huge way. You tell me, do you think that the Biden administration did this overtly to try to X out Trump and other people associated with Trump?
I think it's a yes to both. There's no question that banking regulators were leaning on the banking industry to punish their political enemies. That said, this goes back to even before the Biden administration, even before the original Trump administration. There's some Operation Choke Point under the Obama administration, where the Obama administration was getting the banking industry to basically debank politically disfavored industries, even things like fireworks manufacturers and sellers. So this is a long road how we got to this. That said, I don't really buy this passive voice from Brian Moynihan and Jamie Dimon. These guys were collaborators in this, and they were happy to go along with it. So there is fault on both sides, not just the regulators, but the banks who are more than willing to participate.
So one of my favorite statistics, and I talk about it every time I host, is that the majority of people, when they were interviewed in exit polling in Pennsylvania, when they said they voted to save democracy, they were Donald Trump voters. And this is the kind of stuff, this banana republic stuff, that pushed me over the edge to vote for Trump over broken glass. That all of that long-winded way to say, I don't think this is just hitting Donald Trump. How many Americans were facing this and they had none of the resources, both, political capital and money, all these things that Donald Trump did? How many people are they debanking here?
Well, that's part of the issue is they won't tell us, because when there were case after case after case of debanking that seemed obvious, politically motivated, they would claim that it was actually the KYC regulations, the Know Your Customer regulations that we have in place to prevent the financing of terrorism. Oh, this had nothing. This is actually because there's some paperwork you didn't fill out correctly, or, we did a background check and we're not allowed to tell you what came back and why you're not allowed to have a bank account. So they would hide behind the anti-terrorism measures. And so they really never admitted that there was debanking. This is a bombshell for Brian Moynihan to basically admit that it was completely politically motivated, the reasons that President Trump was debanked. Because up until recently, they were just claiming that, we can't tell you why, but it has nothing to do with debanking. This is definitely not politically motivated. So this is a huge revelation.
Sorry about that. Stephen Miller, the deputy White House chief of staff, has announced that the Treasury Secretary is in the midst of working on not only new regulations and new rules for banks to work under, but also some sort of backlash, cracking down on banks who have done this in the past, some sort of, retribution. They should pay a penalty for doing this, or are they going to be able to say, hey, listen, we were just, adhering to the rules and we were told to do this?
Well, see, that's the issue, is that the banks are being a little too cute by half there by saying that it was just following orders. Okay, there is nothing in the banking regulations that allows the government to punish its political enemies. The only way that is able to happen is when the banks collaborate with a political administration to do so. They have to be willing to do it. If they were to say, actually, you're not allowed to tell us to debank the president or the former president of the United States or any conservative, you guys can go pound sand. As soon as they had said that, it would have been over. But because Brian Moynihan is one of the wokest CEOs in America, and Jamie Dimon is one of the wokest CEOs in America, he's just really a liar and tries to hide it. They were more than willing to do so.
If I could, Will, I think a lot of the original sin here also goes back to the FBI under Christopher Wray and James Comey continuing to repeat this lie that the number one terrorist threat domestically in America were conservative white men, those racist MAGA types. Because as soon as the FBI says these people are terrorists, of course a bank acting responsibly doesn't want to do business with a terrorist.
I mean, to some extent that's true, but you got to remember that during the J6 investigations, banks were willing to hand over the location data from their own customers' phones. So if you had like a Wells Fargo app on your phone, for example, they were drawing a circle and saying, like, I'll give you all the location data of anyone that was anywhere near Washington, D.C. without a warrant. Okay? So This isn't the FBI saying, here we went to a court. Right. Yep. They were more than happy to sell out their own customers because they were politically disfavored. So This isn't obviously an issue where there was political pressure applied by regulators, but the bank should not be that passive voice that you noted, Bethany. That's an insane cop-out for an active role that they played in persecuting their own customers who happen to be conservatives.
So more to come on this topic you're predicting.
I hope so. I hope this EO is an absolute devastation. And for one thing, we've gotten way too much concentration in the banking sector. The only reason this is possible is because Dodd-Frank basically cut off the creation of new banks. It is slowed to an absolute trickle. And so we've had massive concentration. So the big five, Wells Fargo, Citi, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, they're basically like 50% or 40% of the entire banking market in the world at this point. And certainly in the nation. And that's part of the reason they have so much power. We need to break that up. I hate to go back to we got to go back to the regulations and create more free market, competition. I think they ought to follow the law, whether they're a big player or a small player. But adding some more competition would certainly curtail this. And that's something that I hope the EO punishes the wrongdoers, and maybe we find a way to create some new competitor banks that people can move to that aren't insane.
Okay, you with your radical ideas, follow the law. Unbelievable. Radical. Thank you, Will Hild, Consumer Research. Always a great guest. Don't be a stranger. We got to have you back more often.
Later this morning in the Chris Plant Show, Tulsi Gabbard promises to root out deep state bad actors. And the deep state bad actors are striking back. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
And it's time for a little critter news here, or as our intrepid executive producer frames this story, cats are dumb. do you have dogs? You don't have cats.
I don't have cats. I don't like cats. So I actually don't think they're dumb. I think they're quite the opposite. I think they're terrifyingly smart, and they would eat my face if I died.
Not in this case. In Amsterdam, cats keep drowning themselves. Now, to be fair, they're dying in a noble act of heroism as mommy cats are seeing their little baby kittens
this is so
falling into the
6:30 in the morning.
Well, it happens. It's the circle of life, okay? These little kittens are like falling into the canals, which are ubiquitous in Amsterdam, I'm told. And then the mommy cat tries to go in and get them, and then the mommy cat can't get out.
Why? You can make fun of my husband and call him balding, but I will not sit through a segment in which you're talking about drowning mommy cats dying trying to save their kittens. This is where I leave.
All right, fine.
Done.
But, the city of Amsterdam, you'll be happy to know, has come up with an elegant solution. They're installing little wooden staircases along the canals so the cats can escape if they happen to tumble down.
Best thing out of Amsterdam since Rembrandt.
You're right. Listen, I don't mean to single out the cats and call them dumb for this, but you don't hear this problem with dogs, do you?
So, no, but this this makes cats sound better because they're dying trying to save their kittens.
Well,
thank God I'm not PMSing. I would start crying on air. This is the saddest thing I've ever heard in my life.
They're animals. Puppies don't fall into the canal, and if they did, mommy would be able to save them without drowning herself.
Can everyone please? I'm going to start a poll on X right now.
Oh, I will win.
This segment never should have been allowed on air.
It's critter news. That's what we do.
No, this is depressing.